Welcome to the New Mexico Suncast. I'm Jim Williams with our special guest, Connie Vigil. Connie, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're kind to have spent some time with us already.
Yes.
I want to let our viewers know Connie considers herself to be a citizen advocate and lobbyist. She has founded a nonprofit. She's done a lot of work when it comes to mental health challenges and homelessness. Mm-hmm. Connie, you don't really think those two descriptions of people that are unhoused should be separated, do you?
No, because I'd say the majority of people that are unhoused do have behavioral health issues.
Yeah. And I know, too, that you've had experiences in your personal life with some things, terrible things happening even on your stoop of your home. Mm-hmm. But then your heart, when you see people living on the streets, also speaks to you in another way. So tell us about your personal experience with the unhoused.
Well, I grew up in North Downtown Albuquerque, known as Wells Park. For whatever reason, since Mayor Chavez was the mayor, and I was actually probably at New Mexico Tech at the time, but we became a city that concentrated our homeless centers in one area of town, and that is primarily Wells Park. So my grandparents' home is still there. We also have a commercial business next to our house. It's become sort of a mixed use. So I moved back to Albuquerque after being gone 35 years, living in 5 other states, various careers, and came back when my mom passed away and my dad needed me. And so I'm back in the Wells Park neighborhood. I served on the board of the Wells Park Neighborhood Association, ran for city council in 2019 in that district just because of that issue. But I literally see the problem every single day in front of my house on a constant basis.
So you've been affected personally by people living outside your home on the street. There's crime, there's other kinds of things that are happening. Mm-hmm. But then you also have a lot of empathy, like how can these people possibly live on the street? And so you feel, and I love this when you shared it the last time you were here, you talked about some training that you attended in Miami-Dade County.
Absolutely.
In Florida. So I thought today, in the interest of maybe providing this information for our mayoral candidates.
Sure.
Because I don't know about you, but I've not heard a real specific plan from anybody. Now, with one exception, Mayor Keller seems to indicate that he's directed a lot of money and a lot of resources and is helping thousands of homeless. The problem I see is that he can't verify that, and neither can anyone else. The facilities and things seem to be in place, but the number of people actually being treated. So rather than being critical and evaluative, let's talk about Miami-Dade and what you learned there.
Sure. Well, coming from a science background, I was in medical research most of my life. Part of that time studying schizophrenia on a molecular basis or the pharmaceutical side of things. So, and also having friends that had various degrees of mental illness and drug addiction. So with that said, when I moved back to Albuquerque about 13 years ago and needles were the big problem, I had actually worked at the CDC in Anchorage, and the program for needle exchange initiated out of the CDC. It was supposed to be 1-for-1. So at that time when Mayor Keller had the community picking up needles and that became a huge issue, I sort of responded to having neighborhood meetings, both with legislators, county, city, and the business sector, because we also have a business. The businesses are very much negatively affected, and I have a heart for the business people. My family's owned businesses, and we do have a commercial building right in the heart.
So there's no doubt that when people are encamped near or sitting on your property as a business person, let's say maybe you have a restaurant and there's people kind of leaning up against the building and different things, and they may have legitimate needs, but that does affect your business in a negative way.
Absolutely, and we've seen it happen time after time, from closings of very popular restaurants like the Range to, the Village Inn, as an example, on Manal, and other places. I've known several businesses in my direct area that were literally burned down. And vandalism, of course, causes a huge cost to the business owner, and walk-in business just disappears.
Yeah.
So,
What is the approach of the Miami-Dade training? And you like that training and have taken a number of people there because they are seeing some fruit from their labor. It seems to be helping. What's different about that approach than what we're trying in Albuquerque?
well, Miami has a very comprehensive approach to the problem. They've been working on their issues for about 20 years. Of course, they're a much larger city. They're as large as
Sure.
the whole state, but one particular person, Judge Leifman, in Dade County, gathered everyone together, from the police force to the medical experts to the judges, and they formulated a plan to address both their unhoused and untreated, and they are leading the nation in that model. They also adopted the sequential intercept model, or MAP they call it, and that was developed by a group out of New York. Policy Research Associates recognize that many mentally ill, about it seems 60% of mentally ill, will at some time or another be in jail, be incarcerated for whatever the things they end up doing. And it's a huge problem because mental health all over the country is happening right in the jails, in the county jails, and it's not a good place.
Connie,
So-
is there a differentiation between mental health challenges and someone who has damaged their brain because of substance abuse?
Well, I think they're concurring problems. They call them co-occurring,
Okay.
technically, but a lot of people who use drugs do end up in psychosis and mental illness diagnosis. But there's hardly any discernment between the two, because long-term use of drugs can actually lead to very severe mental illness.
So the Dade County training, does that include people determining that someone living on the street is, for lack of better verbiage, is a danger to themselves and others?
Yes, you're spot on that topic, and they do serious outreach with law enforcement and peer support, which impresses me a lot. We do it with AOC, our community outreach. The difference is that law enforcement officers go without a gun. They go very unassuming to the community in areas where people frequent, and they bring peer support workers. And they reach out to them to the point where they can actually bring them into treatment voluntarily. Or they can also call a judge who's ready and willing to give a guardianship order should it be needed. And to me, that's the key factor. Miami and the whole state of Florida passed a bill similar to what Albuquerque has, the No Public Camping Bill, but that's across the whole state of Florida. And
But
so,
it doesn't appear that that's being enforced in Albuquerque.
well, yes and no. It's sort of, I would say, a willy-nilly approach. Yes, you can call, and there are people that will come to a large camp, but they will try to disenable it, move it, but it ends up moving to someone else's area. So it's a movement process. It's not really a redirection per se. And in Miami, they have a very large facility, transitional housing, and they have voluntary treatment for people who want it. And then the court-ordered side is a 200 bed facility that was built by lots of funding over.
So Connie, a lot of people in the rhetoric politically will talk about incarcerating or arresting people that are homeless. This is a little bit different. This may be, in fact, a situation where if somebody is judged by the judicial system, not by the police officers. First, they're offered an opportunity for voluntary treatment, but if it's determined through some process that they need to be held and they need to be treated, then there is a little bit against the person's wishes. But it may be, would it be unrealistic or unkind to think that maybe these people don't have the discernment to know that they need the help? I mean, it's gotten really, really bad as far as I can see.
Sure. No, you're right, spot on that topic as well, because these individuals kind of lose consciousness, I would say. I would say they're survivors. They're simply living day to day to get something to eat at, one of the nonprofits, and then meet the drug dealer. And, how do they get that money? Well, various sources. A lot of them actually do receive disability checks. A lot of them do receive, EBT, so they have ability to buy food. And some of them, do go to the West Side Shelter. But again, our approach has been driving them in school buses and leaving them in one particular neighborhood, which isn't really the solution. And
just providing a bed for somebody to sleep in, which is something that maybe the West Side homeless facility does. Now, I'm told, at least in the commercials that Mayor Keller does for his mayoral campaign, that they actually have drug treatment and things at the Gateway Center. Is that true?
well, they've had a lot of issues with contracting nonprofits to run what they call their triage. It's a small unit within the Gateway which is set to basically do emergency detox. And the only way you can be brought there is through a police officer or an ambulance. And it's very strict rules as to you can't just walk in and ask for help. But that approach, again, like the detox or triage at UNM, is very short term. In fact, a physician, if you walk into an ER, and a lot of times they were taking people to the ERs, the doctors can only hold them for 72 hours. So again, you've maybe helped that person out of an immediate overdose, immediate detox, but the long-term solution just isn't there. But there's hope. I mean, there's lots of hope.
So the Gateway Center, which is the former Loveless Hospital up on Gibson, for those who may not have traveled that direction and seen it, it's been modernized. I think it's a little bit erroneous how many beds they actually have. I understood that they had 50 and that they just opened up another 100. In fact, that was just released in the last couple days. But the advertisements that I hear from Mayor Keller's is that he's providing assistance to thousands of people, when in fact it sounds like there may not be 50 people in the Gateway Center, and it's hard to know how many people might be using the West Side facility.
Sure.
So all of this seems kind of erroneous, and I'm not sure why that is. Shouldn't we all be working together? I do understand also, at least one of the mayoral candidates has brought out a number that the Keller administration has spent over $350 million addressing this problem, and the results are hard to measure.
And that's absolutely true, I think. But on a positive note, we do have the facility, which is unlike many other communities in New Mexico. We have that facility. The county runs what they call the care center. It's off of Zuni. It has a degree of housing and some space for people. And I think the West Side Shelter has been remodeled since myself and 20 others did a tour of the West Side Shelter. It was in horrible shape. It's much improved, but they're struggling, and they have a company out of Arizona. So we seemingly want to give the job to a nonprofit. The city and the county, I guess, don't have enough staff to technically run it themselves, although they're receiving the funding. So we end up hiring a nonprofit. They leave. They become, an issue, and we're just constantly revolving the door around having some contractor run that facility. Right now at MDC, as I noticed, I'm always noticing the news, but as of October 6th, MDC was in trouble again. UNM did take over the care capacity at MDC jail here in Bernalillo County, but their increase in patients went from 150 a day in April to 500 a day now in October. They had an independent audit biannual, and it said that they weren't even giving enough care to people that were detoxing to keep them hydrated. They've had the stats in the newspaper said since 2020, 38 people have actually died under the so-called guise of medical care at MDC. Now, is that the county's fault? Well, the county is faced with a difficult situation.
We should say that there's a degree of danger when someone is using fentanyl or other types of drugs. The detox procedure is somewhat risky
Yes.
to people. And so, yeah, it's hard to say whether that's MDCs or the medical caregivers or whether it's just was inevitable because people have used drugs for so long.
Well, some of it is being answered to by an attorney. People at MDC, their family members, people who've passed away and felt that they weren't getting adequate care have hired an attorney. She was quoted in the newspaper as saying that it doesn't seem like it's a very high priority. I do know that UNM spokesperson has spoken about it, and they're trying to get more staff. But again, trying to really help 500 people in a jail setting is not the ideal.
Connie, I've heard various people say this. They say that 75% of the people that live on the streets in Albuquerque, and I think this would be consistent to most areas where there are people that are unhoused, 75% of the people do not want assistance. So if that's accurate, would it, and I'm not sure that the way the Dade County model works, that there would be a way to, and you tell me the legal term, to force people to get treatment through conservatorship. But would it be unreasonable for the city of Albuquerque to simply say, if you don't want to take advantage of the services that we have available to you, you need to leave?
Well,
I mean, I feel mean even asking the question,
yeah.
but I think the question's obvious.
Well, that's a really good question because obviously other cities, and it's well known, other cities and even within New Mexico and across the nation have seen Albuquerque as a place to bus their unhoused, untreated. So we are a catch-all for the nation. We're well known across the nation as a place where someone can come here and openly do fentanyl on the streets of Albuquerque and not really have any consequence. So there's that fine line between the law enforcement, because these drugs are illegal, and then what do you do with that person that doesn't technically want help? But there is a term called pre-detention, and that has been utilized to an extent with the adult youth court and mental health court across the state to an extent, and that's trying to address those individuals who are nonviolent, who do have drug or mental health issues, that can simply possibly get into a treatment program rather than sentencing them to, a misdemeanor type of crime.
Right.
And although, we've tried it, even Mayor candidate Ubelez tried it in his capacity of a federal prosecutor. We're doing it to some extent. Judge Leos is doing it, young adult court, et cetera. But again, we have such a lack of facilities for treatment that not that many people are going to succeed. And you need the long-term care, the in-house treatment centers. And I feel the Gateway could be that. It very well could be.
Let me ask this question more conceptually than necessarily specific numbers. If it's true that Albuquerque has spent over $350 million under the Keller administration addressing this issue, conceptually, having the number of treatment centers that you think we need with housing or beds for treatment, and then I guess transitional housing, do you think it would cost a lot more money than that to put that plan in place, or would it be about the same? Conceptually, is it in the ballpark?
Well, I'd say it would actually save us money because the cost of incarcerating someone long term is extremely expensive. In fact, County Commissioner Eric Olivas has presented that to the legislators in the Courts Corrections committees he attended with me, and honestly, it costs us a lot more money to incarcerate, to allow those individuals to destroy businesses, destroy public property, destroy really the whole safety issue of the whole city, because not only are those people doing drugs, but they're associated with drug dealers. So we're bringing in this element of crime. We're not truly addressing it, especially on the side of, cleanup of the city. But technically, if you look at the cost to incarcerate someone versus treat them to recovery, you're going to save a lot in the long run. Miami-Dade has actually been able to eliminate one particular jail that they had. And of course, they also have in place Jackson Memorial Hospital as an example. And they concentrate the treatment very quickly. We have an issue because we have a capacity issue, number one, with the general population. And then we don't have these centers up and running with full staff. If the Gateway was up and running with full staff, similar to what they're doing in Miami-Dade, we could succeed. And I'm working on bills now that will appropriate money for graduate students from the state of New Mexico to be able to not only medicate people, to treat them, but also to diagnose. And that's a huge, huge issue as well, because you've got people that are waiting for diagnosis in the jail.
So let's transition now to, do you believe that New Mexico could really reduce the problem with homelessness and substance abuse, drug addiction in general, and we might also become an educational hub for people being trained professionally how to address this around the country? So what do our universities need to do, and what type of people do we need helping us address this problem?
Well, from the state's licensing bureau, you have certain guidelines for people who can both prescribe medication and
So just a social worker can't prescribe medication?
No, and the social worker can do the day-to-day care, making sure people get to their appointments and, have proper housing, et cetera. You've got the CNA level, which does the day-to-day care. I equate it to a nursing home kind of care, because these individuals do need 24/7. At least initially, until they're out of danger, until they're, in a capacity where they're not going to be a danger to themselves and others. But that takes time. And the other factor, I think, is, we're not collaborating enough. I hope that the universities, and that's what I'm working on now, we can get a collaborative agreement between all our universities. NMSU has a very strong nurse practitioner program that specializes in mental health. Portales, of course, is social work directed, and University of New Mexico has a really nice psychiatry degree. I call it a nice degree because it's a PhD with the postdoc, which is training to do forensic work. That means with the postdoc from UNM, and Dr. Youngren, shout out to him, he's Dr. Stokes' husband, created this program that PhDs in psychiatry do a 1-year clinical training. They can literally go and work with our DA's office, Sam Bregman, and help diagnose the long log of people just waiting for diagnosis. So from all aspects of NMSU, Eastern, Portales, you've got community colleges that could create more CNAs. You've got to bring everyone together, and I fully believe that we need a trust fund for the graduate school education. I want to shout out to Senator Figueroa. She was in a courts correction meeting that I was at about 2 weeks ago here in Bernalillo County, and she's recommending that we do basically a pipeline boot camp. We need to recruit students from New Mexico, get them into these fields, and get them educated into licensing, and then we can build a workforce. And I think with our facilities across the state run by the Department of Health, that we already have a leg up. We have the Behavioral Health Institute, Las Vegas, that could be used as a training center. Turquoise Lodge is also run by DOH, and that sits within the Gateway. That's a state funded agency. And also Roswell has a rehab center. So I'm positive in the fact that we do have these large facilities. Yes, we invested a lot in the Gateway, but can we see it come to full fruition? And I'm hopeful.
You're hopeful. Along the lines of money, in the past legislative session here in 2025, you helped to pass a bill that is going to assist with funding. Can you tell us about
Yes.
that?
Yes, thank you very much for acknowledging that. For about 10 years, I've been knocking on the door in Santa Fe with various legislators who've sponsored my bills, from Senator Lopez to Republicans like Andrew Reeb signed on. I can't do a shout out to everyone, but I try to be bipartisan. I was looking at a strategic plan to address this, and then I came across the Miami model a few years ago. And really, when you go to Miami and you see how they've incorporated law enforcement, judges, the DAs, the PDs, and the medical, professionals in a unified effort to help people to recover and get jobs and get back in the community, it's pretty eye-opening. And of course, I have to shout out Adrian Avila. I had been approaching Senator Munoz for many years and went to Gallup last summer to talk to the county city and have the legislators for a luncheon, but Senator couldn't make it. But Adrian Avila, his chief of staff, was very communicative and went to Miami-Dade, and he made it happen. So, you have to network in every way possible, but I think in going back to the mayor candidates, not a single one was, when I talked to almost all of them except Darren White, technically, I was trying to, educate them a little bit about Miami, and honestly, not a single one of them knew about Senate Bill 1. Of course, there's Senate Bill 2 and 3 as bills.
So Senate Bill 1 has been passed and signed by the governor.
Yes, it has.
And that establishes, would that be called a permanent fund?
Yes, sir.
So it's a trust fund, and it'll be funded to what level, and then what amount is available for helping people?
Well, it initially started out as a bill for $1 billion. It was amended somewhat to what now I understand that they'll be building up this by appropriating money into the trust fund, and by 2027 it will build to $1 billion. Okay. It does include staff development. It includes buildings and everything associated with building a network of care. SB 2 and 3 are companion bills, as I call them, because they are asking the...
Those have not been passed yet?
Yes, they have.
Oh, they have. Okay.
In tandem with SB 1, it was widespread support, which was very nice to see.
Yeah.
Republicans joined in with Democrats. There was no real pushback, and those bills are already in effect. That the Administrative Office of the Courts, and I believe UNM, is going to be involved in the actual mapping or assessment of the need in every community. So that's already started to roll out. But, I'm very hopeful. The funding is going to come through the Health Authority. Of course, we just lost that cabinet secretary. But, with the accountability side of each community having to have a 4-year strategic plan, having to show that they've done all their due diligence, hopefully we'll have higher success. And Hobbs has already started that process.
Hobbs is actually, they've had some of their leadership go to Miami.
Yes, it was pretty amazing. When you have leadership like Mayor Sam Cobb, when he found out about it through his senator, he had 10 people from his community go with him.
Yeah.
And when they came back, they've appropriated $40 million from their county.
Connie, I want to go back to the mayoral election. That's coming up here November 4th, so a couple weeks away, maybe a little less, actually. I want to go to that store owner on Central in Albuquerque. Let's say it's a restaurant who has near the drive-through people sitting up against his building that are homeless, and that is affecting their business, and people not wanting to go through the drive-through or park in his parking lot and be confronted by panhandlers, etc. I always want to ask things with grace, and I want to ask things with compassion. So I apologize if this doesn't sound like that, but I think you know my heart. that business owner wants it to know what mayor candidate is going to get the people off of his property, off of their property, and what type of treatment they're going to be offered. It sounds like the Miami-Dade County training actually allows them not to necessarily incarcerate, but to place people in care against their will. And so I guess it leaves that little gap with the people that can't be placed in conservatorship and the people that are not willing to do it voluntarily. Is it unreasonable for our new mayor to say, you must leave Albuquerque? You may not sit on this property. You may not panhandle. You may not do these things, because I think that's what the people of Albuquerque are asking.
Well, that is a really tough question. And many of the residents that are affected, are they really, I mean, when I'm saying residents of the street, I'll qualify that. Are they really from New Mexico? Now, if I was the mayor, I would make the priority of the residents who are unhoused, untreated on the street. I'm talking about residents of New Mexico. Priority one.
I have a friend that is a delivery driver for a local auto parts store.
Sure.
And he has noticed that there's an incredible number of Native Americans that he sees living on the streets. They would be the type of priority that you're talking about.
Absolutely. And, you know, the unfortunate piece of it is that many of the tribal areas do not have the facilities for treatment. So they're basically sent on a bus, literally. I live on 2nd Street. I can see the march from the bus stop of people coming into town. It's an obvious march, and people also being dropped off. And I think, you know, like I said, if I was the mayor candidate, I would recommend that residents, first of all, but anyone else coming into the community, they have to abide by the no public camping law. That's got to be set in stone. And Miami-Dade has been very, very diligent. Of course, they're a tourist area, but think about New Mexico, so are we. So in many ways, we kind of mirror Miami, I'd say. So how do you do that? It's going to take a mayor, whoever gets elected, and I've tried to interview all, but I think I haven't really spoken in detail to Darren White. But I would say the mayor has to be willing to go to Miami. They have to be willing to educate themselves on what the legislator has done. And they have to be willing to work as a community, both with the existing county facilities, the staffing of the county, the city, as well as our local universities, including CNM and UNM. And I think if we can do a collaboration with all of those together, and not necessarily always ask the community for their opinion. I mean, we tend to do that. We tend to have committee meeting. When I'm saying that we need to, yes, get a group of professionals, people that are working in the field, but we also need to go and learn the model. And
So those professionals would be political leadership. They would be medical caregivers.
Yes,
How about judges?
absolutely.
So the judges have to be involved in this process.
Yes, and most of the judges very well know Judge Leafman. We've had behavioral health summits in New Mexico. Judge Leafman has been here multiple times speaking to large groups. And everybody.
And Judge Leafman is the one in Miami-Dade County
Yes.
that's kind of spearheading a lot of this?
Yes, and prior to December when he retired as a judge, a sitting judge in Miami, he started his own company, which is awesome, because what that means is now he can full-time dedicate himself to doing his 2-day training. And also, there's a great, access to a facility. The access to those facilities, seeing how they were built, the 200-bed treatment facility, the Camilla's House 4-story large transitional housing unit right in the heart of Miami. Those are very, very helpful to our people in our community as to how they're going to build them. And I'd like to give a shout out to architect Yu. She went on the tour of Miami because she'll be working on the Clovis facility as well as the contractors who built the buildings, Janes Corporation, invested in going with their development director. So you have to think of it from the building site. How do you build it? How do you bring the staffing, which I hope to bring a lot of money for graduate students to every single university, so we can create, as Senator Figueroa said, a boot camp. How do you get these workers into the field relatively quickly? And I'd like to concentrate on the master's level, the PhD levels, the nurse practitioners.
What I like about that part of your plan is that you want to help people get an advanced education,
Yes.
and you want them to go into a field where they're not going to get paid a lot of money. And so they need to have that schooling really paid for, don't they?
Right. And technically speaking, behavioral health careers do pay well.
Do they?
Yes, they can and they do. And I think we need, as a state, we haven't been really good about paying people who work at state, government facilities. And we have to make that salary competitive, because those types of workers are already in very high demand because we have such a shortage in the general population. But I think it could be a great career. It could pay well. And I think we have to start at the high school level, just educating kids on the need and giving them a full ride. And I think, we've been successful in other fields like criminal justice, for example. Lots of kids going into criminal justice, but where do they get a job? In this case, I'd like to see they have internships that are paid for. They're working in facilities within their own community, so they don't have to travel that far. And also we can retain people that want to stay in New Mexico.
And if you had tuition and reimbursement and some criteria for them serving in New Mexico or in Albuquerque proper, whatever community we're talking about, you'd get a return on your investment for helping them with their education.
Absolutely. And the higher education department now has several types of grants that do require students to agree to stay in New Mexico. I tried for that in a bill last year, and I think it's what we need to do. Is we need to say, we'll be very willing to give you a full ride through your graduate education, pay even for your housing, your everything. And then in turn you will agree to work in New Mexico.
Connie, our last question, and I want to kind of summarize what we've talked about. The Miami-Dade County model does not allow people to go live and do whatever they want on the streets in which they live. But at the same time, it's not incarcerating everybody and making everybody a criminal. It's giving them an opportunity. And one of the things that I've not really addressed, that's really the focus of my last question, is there have been housing units established, hotels converted, etc. But you can't expect success based on what you've said if you give people a home but they're still addicted to drugs. It's still not going to result in a positive outcome.
Right. Well, and I want to acknowledge that not everybody is going to be court ordered to treatment. There are individuals who can go, voluntarily, but
and that is their first opportunity, right?
Yes, and they do have transitional housing for people that want to go in voluntarily. So what I'm saying is, yes, absolutely, you're correct again. You can't just put someone in a house when they still have these many issues. It doesn't work. It's backfired on us, and until we realize this is really a health issue, at the core of it, it's a health issue. We want to address and help to prevent people from getting into the drugs to begin with, but if they are, we need to address it from a criminal standpoint. They are looking at treating felons with second and third degree felonies in Miami, but the key factor is before they get violent. And so if you think about it, if we can treat people early on, keep them off the street, put them into treatment, they won't even need to live on the street. That won't even be an answer, and will reduce the crime, because, again, all of this is associated with the drug world. And the drug world and the crime world are tied one-to-one, and everything happening in our community that's associated with drugs could be eliminated if we can just acknowledge that We need to do prevention, but treatment to recovery.
Connie is just a person who lives in this community. I know you're that as well, but you're really an advocate. You're really out going to meetings, calling politicians. You're doing all the things that I think we as citizens and as voters, we need to be educating ourselves. So thanks for providing some of that for us today.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be on again, and I really pray and hope that our new leadership will, take hold of what the legislators done and help Albuquerque. We can do this. We really can, but it's political will and it's the will of the whole community. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Connie.
Thank you.